Hello, Africa, and welcome to the Kungana podcast. I'm your host, Aburengwi. This is more than just a podcast. It is a project aimed at breaking down the boundaries that divide us as a people, the boundaries that divide our beautiful continent. Over the coming years, we will do this by collecting and sharing stories from all parts of Africa, from Malawi to Cameroon, Ethiopia to Libya, Cairo to Harare. We will connect with as many voices as we can. So we invite all fellow Africans to be part of the Kungana Africa project. This episode features Damilola Oluwatoyinbo, a dynamic speaker, insightful writer, personal transformation expert, corporate trainer and spiritual leader. Damilola holds a BSc in chemical engineering from the University of Lagos. He makes his contribution to the global economy through a training and development enterprise, DreamStream. In 2009, Damilola featured as a contestant on Africa's first oratory-based reality TV show, The Debaters, which was broadcast to 5 million people in 40 African and European countries. In 2011, he opened Dream Academy. He has published 4 books: Just Do It, Seize the Moment, Good to Go New Year's Guide, and Life Lessons from Football. He is currently a pastor of Kings, which stands for Kingdom Influencers in Nations, Generations, and Systems. In 2017, Damilola was named amongst the 100 most influential young Africans at the Africa Youth Awards.
Connecting Africa.
Mr. Damilola Oluwatoyinbo, welcome to Kungana, 1000 African Voices. Please introduce yourself to our listeners. Who is Damilola Oluwatoyinbo?
Aburengwi, is so amazing speaking to you, and I'm super delighted to contribute my voice to the 1,000 voices you're connecting across Africa. Thank you so much for the opportunity. My name is Damilola Oluwatoyinbo, but that's not the full name. You know, most African names have a story behind them. So my full name is Damilola Oluwatoyinbo.
Okay.
And I think that has like a musical twang to it, right?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, so I see myself as a bundle of gifts and grace. Gift because I believe that I have a collection of valuable talents to serve my generation with. Grace because I believe in a higher power that planted me on the rich soil of Africa as a gift to the world. And I serve humanity, I serve my generation through teaching, inspiration, providing perspective on life's issues for personal growth and transformation. And so people call me an inspirational speaker, motivational speaker, author, a teacher, consultant, trainer, and all of that. But I just see those things as expressions, or if you will, more like tools with which I serve the value I bring, which is the blessing of wisdom and inspiration, to those that I meet on my life's journey. So in a nutshell, I'm a bundle of gifts and grace poised to serve my generation, starting with those in Africa and then, of course, the rest of the world.
Okay, I find that most of our listeners always want to know how old our guests are. So I'll just ask that off the bat. How old are you in 2017?
Okay, so do you want to know my biological age, my psychological age?
Okay, we'll go with the biological in this instance.
Okay, so as of 2017, I'm 34 years old. I think if I'm going to be more specific, that's something like 24 years and 7 months and 3 weeks, maybe 5 days, something like that.
Okay, I mean, as I was preparing for this show, the one question that comes to mind is, how does a 34-year-old get to do everything that you've done? What would you say has been the secret to some of the things that you've covered? And we will go through those in detail. But just for starters, where do you get the time to do everything that you are involved in?
Well, first of all, I must say that I feel flattered because in as much as you tell me that you believe I've done a lot, and I do appreciate that, I embrace that as a kind compliment. Ever so often I feel like, wow, there's so much more you could be doing. There's so many lives you could be touching. There are many places you could get to and much value you need to deliver to your world. But again, one needs to be grateful and see all that you've done as a privilege, right? So I think that there are two major things that have shaped my life in that regard. And one of them is having a passion for people, just being there to serve, having the mindset of somebody who's a steward of resources and who has a compelling desire to literally just serve, by teaching, sharing experiences, advising, counseling. So I think that passion to make a difference is a key part. Now, the second thing I would say is also being willing to learn, because I see teaching as a learning experience. I believe it was one of the ancient Greek philosophers who said that when we teach, we'll learn twice. So in serving others, we also are served, we learn, we grow. And so when I put these two together, the push and pull of serving and learning, the tension that exists between giving to others and being available to receive from them, I think that in that pull and in that space, it helps me do the things that I do in terms of writing, in terms of sharing, in terms of teaching, galvanizing teams and building leadership structures and all of that. I think all of that exists within those two frames for me.
And as we go through most of our episodes, I always imagine a young African child listening to Damilola thinking, how can I, sitting somewhere in, say, Nairobi, Kenya, get to be where Damilola is today? And I find that the one thing that we can do to assist that child is to maybe start from your beginnings. As you were growing up, where were you born? Where did you go to school? Just maybe to start with that.
All right, that's brilliant. One man said that the secrets of great people is in their stories. And so I think it's very good that we start from there. So I was born in 1983 in the ancient city of Ibadan. That's in the southwest part of Nigeria. Now, the city of Ibadan happens to be the second largest city in Africa and the largest city in West Africa. And it's known for its stories about warriors and ancient settlers in the southwest. But I grew up in what people will call a middle-class family. My parents, both of them were actually civil servants. They had a stint with business at different times, but they were essentially civil servants much of their lives. And so we grew up in an environment where they wanted the best for us. And so they worked very hard to give us the best of education that they could afford, or maybe sometimes that they couldn't afford really, but they just wanted the best for us. And I grew up in a family of 5, so I have an older brother, an older sister, and 2 younger sisters. And growing up, for me, it was a lot of fun because how we talk about the African story and the folk tales about the tortoise and the hare and the rabbits and all of that. So there was an element of the traditional concepts of Africa, like where you have a family setting, tales by moonlight. So even though we're a middle-class family, my parents, particularly my dad, seemed to have a closer contact with his roots. Yeah, and so he told us stories. Some of them were fictional, I'm sure. But some of them were oral tradition, the history of Africa and all of that. And so I enjoyed that bit. We lived in a large compound. I enjoyed that bit. So there were some struggles that I had personally. One of them, both struggles were essentially connected to my esteem. So I didn't grow up so confident and bold and being able to articulate my thoughts this clearly or this intelligently. But there were 2 major things that happened. So one of them was that I used to wet the bed, or as I like to say, I was a rainmaker.
That's funny.
I had the unique ability of changing the level of humidity of any room I slept in. And if you're growing up and you grow up with that kind of issue, that kind of problem, it affects your esteem, right? I think the second thing was that I was not one of the tallest people in school. As a matter of fact, I was one of the shortest people in school. Or as I like to say, I was down to earth.
Okay.
I had a close relationship with gravity. So this kind of things affected my esteem. So, well, the good thing was I was bright in school, I was smart and all of that. But then I had this sacred issues that helped me down. And the reason I'm saying that is because you talked about the African child, you talked about the person growing up in Nairobi, Kenya, or somebody growing up in Burundi or Rwanda or some other parts of Africa who's dealing with some of those challenges. Some of them may be domestic challenges. There could be issues of verbal abuse. There could be issues of personal insecurity, a sense of inadequacy. I've been through those patches as well. But I'm going to fast forward a little bit. What happened to me was when I got to secondary school, what some other people call college in some parts of Africa, I began to realize that people would come to me and ask questions about life. And the more I shared my little knowledge or my perspectives, the more valuable I seemed to be to them. And so one of the fundamental things I discovered about life is that people are more concerned about how much value you can bring to the table than they are concerned about the suffering you went through to get to the table. So in a nutshell, I grew up with those kind of issues, but after a while, I focused more on how I could serve people, how I could turn my stories, like talking about how I used to wet the bed. Now I'm saying it with humor. So just being able to put the spin on some of those sad and painful experiences and being able to create value for people. Those are some of the things that have helped me. So for that African child, think about what you've been through, the hardship, the pain. Those are the things that make you human. Those are the things that make you believable. Those are the things that make you relatable. Those are the things that essentially make you valuable if you're able to find the blessings and the lessons and you look beyond yourself and you're able to serve other people with the benefits of your experience.
Okay, it sounds like you've really thought about life in general. And once again, I'll go back to the fact that at 34, it's a relatively young age. So I think now I'm starting to understand what you meant by whether I was asking about your biological age or your psychological age. I think it's starting to make sense. So you then go to university. What year was that? And what did you study at university? And did you find that what you studied there kind of helps you today in sort of forming the person that you eventually became?
Yeah, that's brilliant. So I got into university in 2001. And before getting into university, I actually had issues as to what exactly I was going to study. And I think that generally happens with people who have a plurality of gifts or who have been exposed to a variety of opportunities. So I had a thing for the arts and I had a thing for the sciences. And I don't know how it is in South Africa or other parts of Africa, but in Africa, if you grew up in a middle-class family, generally, I mean in Nigeria specifically, if you grew up in a middle-class family, the idea is that you need to be in the sciences, you need to do something that is more technologically driven, something that along the lines of engineering or medicine or what else do you have in that field? Oil and gas, something in that field. So my parents felt I should do that because they were scientists by training. And my older brother too had studied engineering. So they advised that, study engineering. Now, I love the arts and I had an interest in the sciences. So I said, what can I study that blends arts and science? And the only thing that came to me was architecture.
Okay.
So I wanted to study architecture. That was my plan. That was my desire. But then my parents were like, why should you study architecture? The economy is tough. Things are pretty difficult. Not so many people are able to afford their own homes. And so by their rationale, it's going to be difficult for you to really prosper, as in like make a lot of money being an architect, because the demand for your craft to be limited considering the circumstances in which the economy had spun or based on the condition of the economy. So I said, okay, let me just study engineering. After all, after a semester or two, I'll be going to the United Kingdom to further my education, because at the time, my plan was to go study in the UK. And that was the idea. Anyway, long story short, I eventually studied chemical engineering. I didn't get to travel again, so I was in quote stuck. studying chemical engineering. I had no passion for it, no flair for it, no desire for it, no aspiration along those lines. But I began to study that. And now I need to mention this. I went to secondary school on scholarship, on federal government scholarship in Nigeria. And that was based on my academic merits. But something interesting happened by my second year in the university. I failed. Now, failing for me was very, very alien, as in I had never failed before. But I failed, and that was because I was so distracted. I didn't enjoy the course. I was not always in class. In fact, I spent some time in architecture, in the classes in architecture, just because I was so passionate about that. So I failed, and from that point, I knew I was not going to graduate at the right time because I failed a prerequisite course. Now, what that meant was for me to take other courses, I needed to pass that course. Yeah. And my university at the time wasn't doing resits. They were doing carryovers. So resits meant that if you fail a course, you could write it after the general exams and then still catch up with your mates. But they weren't doing that then. I don't know whether they do that now, but some schools do that. So at the time, if you failed a prerequisite course, you have to come back a year afterwards. You know,
Okay.
so I didn't enjoy the experience. It was pretty tough. Now, but to answer your question, do I think it's helping me now in real life? I think it's helping me. I think that it helped me develop thick skin. I think it helped me put failure in perspective. I think it helped me get over people's opinions. I think it helped me understand that failure is not the end of the road. It's just the bend in the road. And that if you regroup, re-strategize, learn your lessons, pick yourself up, you can actually get over it. So one of the things I did was I had to concentrate. I had to learn how to focus. I had to learn how to humble myself and talk to some of the smarter people in class and work out better arrangements, learning patterns, asking questions based on what I didn't understand. And so I'm excited. I wasn't excited at the time, but I'm excited I went through that process. And I'm excited I was able to leverage what could have been a negative, heartbreaking, destructive experience and channel those lessons into grit, into determination, into passion for life, and into perspective, for the future.
Okay. I mean, some people describe you, and I think you touched on it earlier, as a dynamic speaker, a writer, a personal transformation expert, corporate trainer, and a spiritual leader. So after you had finished with your BS in chemical engineering, what made you decide that you were going to become a speaker, a writer? Was it a natural progression for you, or were you forced into that stream by circumstances? Or is it something that you always knew you wanted to do growing up?
Okay, so growing up, I had three major ambitions, if you will. Like when I was a little child, and I don't know what it's called in many parts of Africa, but in Nigeria, we call Santa Claus Father Christmas. It's on Father Christmas. And so generally, Christmas break, Christmas holiday, your parents take you to see Santa Claus, whom we call Father Christmas. And they'll ask you, what would you like to be when you grow up, Dami? And I will say, when I grow up, I want to be a chief, I want to be a soldier, and I want to be a pastor. Those are my three aspirations. Now, I didn't really understand what I was saying because I literally felt you had to study to be a soldier. Like you had to go to university to learn how to fight and all of that. I felt like you had to study a couple of courses to become a chief. And I felt like you had to study a couple of courses to become a pastor. Now, growing up and reflecting, I realized that the mind of a child captures the essence of the human being and it seeks its own vocabulary to interpret what it wants to be. I don't know if that captures the thought. So basically, what I really wanted to do was, as a chief, I wanted influence. As a soldier, I wanted to be able to champion a cause. And as a pastor, I wanted to be able to help people grow, become better, improve the quality of their lives. Now, all those three things were inherent in my subconscious. And everywhere I went, even when I was failing in school, I was still helping people, right? I told somebody recently, I said, I failed so gallantly, I made failing look attractive. If you say, So I never lost my fire to champion a cause. I never lost my fire to fight for people. I never lost my fire to help people. So even in school, I was privileged to be the leader of a fellowship and to be influential in different student bodies and organizations. And so from sharing my wisdom with 2-3 people, they would say, oh, you know what? Whenever we're having the Association of Accounting Students Week, whenever we're having the Engineering Students Association presentation, let's get Dami to speak. Let's get him to inspire our audience. Let's get him to encourage us as we build up towards our exams. Let's get him to talk about relationships and all of that. Now, when that began to happen, I started getting referrals in school. So in year 3, year 4, I was already speaking sometimes maybe 2-3 times every month to different associations, different committees, different clusters of student bodies. And I was getting some compensation. I was getting some recognition. I was getting some awards even. So sometimes I get a plaque. Sometimes they give me a couple of thousands of naira, which is not really a lot of money. I mean, like in today's currency, $1 is about 360 naira, I think, something like that. So at the time, I was getting something like 10,000, 15,000 naira, which was in dollars, that's something like $50. But that wasn't bad as a student, for a 20-minute presentation. So before I graduated, I was already earning some money as a speaker. And after graduating, I kept on getting invitations to speak on campus and off campus. So I was supporting myself, with a couple of hundreds of dollars every month. And that was not bad. But I think the big break that really happened was I had an opportunity in 2009 to be on a show, which is actually reputed to be the first oratory-based, debate-based television show in Africa. Now, I don't know whether that's true or not, but research shows that that's possibly true. And so I was on television for 3 months. I was on television for 3 months. I don't know if you know DSTV.
Yes.
Yeah, so I was on DSTV for 3 months. Once a week, we would do a presentation. And this was a collection of people from different parts of Nigeria. We went through about 4 stages of auditions, different parts of Nigeria. Hundreds of people applied, and then down to scores of people, and then down to 14 people who were in a house for 3 months, had experts come to us from the United States Information Service, the British Council, and some other experts who were teaching us on presentation, communication, debate, and all of that. And so it really helped me fine-tune my natural gifts and talents and my passion to communicate. And, getting that kind of mileage, that kind of visibility on air was huge. So when I got off the show at the end of 2009, people already knew me. I was a recognizable face in different parts of Nigeria. And so it helped me build a career. Now, not just a passion or a hobby, but to really build a career. So I started hosting my own workshops, my own events, my own seminars. I started getting to coach and to speak at different places as well. So that's like how it evolved. It's sort of evolved from a passion to a hobby to a space that was created for me. And then this blew out thing like, oh, you know what? This is actually a career right now. And it's gotten better over the years.
Okay, I'm going to jump right straight to the Africa Youth Awards. So in this year, actually, you were named amongst the 100 most influential young Africans. I know that from research that last year you were awarded or ranked amongst the 100 most influential young Nigerians. What is it about you that you believe catapulted you into the 2017 rankings? I mean, 100 most influential young Africans, that is quite some achievement.
Whoa, I was gobsmacked myself. I'm like, wow, I can't believe this. Many times when you're just doing your work in your little corner, or you think it's a little corner, you're doing your work, you're putting in your best, you're serving, you're innovating, you just don't know how much of a difference it's making in people's lives. And you never can tell who's watching. You never can tell who's listening. You never can tell who's observing. And so I've been privileged to receive testimonials from different parts of the world. Weekly, I get testimonials from Germany, from the United Arab Emirates, from United Kingdom. People telling me, I just stumbled on something you posted online. I watched your video, followed your vlog, just different things. And I never do those kind of things for recognition, never do those kind of things for fame or popularity. I just express and share, like, if this thing could have been of help to me, then it definitely can be of help to somebody else. So that's all I've been doing. So when I saw the list for the most influential 100 Nigerians last year, I was like, wow, that's amazing. And then this year, Africa Youth Awards, I'm like, whoa, okay, this is big. So I think that one of the things for me, maybe if I could crystallize it in 3 C's, I love alliteration. So I use a lot of C's and E's and P's to just capture this. So I think the first thing for me is care. I care about what I do. Like when I saw your mail about 1,000 African voices, I'm like, whoa, I love this. I care about I care about connecting. I care about compassion. I care about creativity. I care about innovation. So one of the things that really attracted me to you is this is innovative. This is fresh. This is like, okay, you know what? Let's connect different minds across Africa. Let's leverage the power of technology. Let's beam this. Let's tell our own stories. Let's share, from different perspectives, from Nairobi, from Lagos, from Kigali, from Joburg, from, Casablanca, from all over the world, all over Africa. Let's network. So I care about my message of transformation. I care about people. I care about, the next level. I care about growth and development. That's the first thing. The second thing, I think, to answer your question, is consistency. And so many of you, I held a workshop called Win a couple of days ago. Today's Wednesday, so on Saturday, this is about 4 or 5 days ago. And in attendance was this guy who was my junior in secondary school, and he attended that workshop. Now, we hadn't seen in years. We hadn't seen since 2000. But we ran into each other at a cash machine. Some people call it a cash machine, some people call it the ATM. About 2 months ago. And he said, oh, I recognize you from school and all of that. Now, he said to the people who were in attendance at the workshop, he said, this man right here has been doing this thing for over 15 years. I've known him since before the year 2000 and has always been speaking at the school assembly and at the gatherings in secondary school. So I think that consistency, sharing and speaking, because what happens is you don't need to change your message, but you need to grow your audience. And so there's some people like you now who are beginning to know about me or hear about me because of the African Youth Awards or because of the nomination or different awards and all of that. I just got another message from a group in Nigeria, and they've nominated me for Mentor of the Year. So
Wow.
Now these are new audiences, right? These are new audiences, and I'm excited about it because I'm doing the same thing, but I'm doing it on increasing levels of creativity, new levels of excellence, leveraging technology, going across different borders and all of that. And I think that the third thing I would say is something I've already mentioned, which is creativity. So there are many speakers who just speak, but I don't just see myself as a speaker. I see speaking as a tool, you see. So that shift for me is very important. I don't see myself as a life coach, even though people call me that, but I see coaching as a tool. I see coaching as a psychological technology. Okay. That helps me bring about the message of transformation in a more believable, personal, impressive, and impactful fashion that creates lasting transformation, lasting change. So creativity, the way I design my books are different, the way I organize my coaching sessions are different, the way I make my presentations are different. So I think those three things, caring, seeing it as a calling, not just as a profession, not just as a career. Number 2 is the consistency, and number 3 is the creativity. Yeah.
Okay, I actually really like that. By the way, congratulations on the nomination for Mentor of the Year. That sounds like something really big. I mean, it's one thing to be nominated amongst influential, but mentor, now you're really moving to the next level. So really congratulations and well done on that. Maybe
Thank you so
Damilola, just to shift gears a bit, can you maybe talk to us about kings, the kingdom influencers in nations, generations, and systems? The
much.
name in itself is captivating. What is kings? What is that about?
I love that. A lot of people go like, Kings, what's that? It sounds powerful. I want to be a part of it,
Yeah.
but I need to understand more about it. And so I've been privileged now to serve across different spaces and different spheres, in the corporate world, in through charity organizations, youth groups, churches, and all of that. And one of the questions I always ask myself is, how do I make a bigger difference using the resources I have now? So, assuming that the resources I have now never increase and I never get more, how do I make the most of what I have? How do I build something, or how do I leverage opportunities, platforms to push out this message? So I served as a missionary, in the United Kingdom between 2012 and 2015. I mean, I still had my online platforms running, sharing my message through technology and hosting some events here and there. But I was working with an organization, and I served as a missionary in the UK, and I served also in different areas, helping to supervise the food bank, the youth groups, organizing workshops for young people, things around getting off drugs, things around chastity and purity, sexual purity, moral responsibility, civil responsibility, and the likes. And I also served in the church in that regard as well, where we were teaching and sharing from the Word of God, building teams and helping people grow personally and spiritually and all of that. And I began to feel a stirring sometime in 2015, a stirring to go back home, as in by home I mean Nigeria, Africa, and to engage some of these things I've learned over the years across different platforms, to build something that could share relevant messages of spiritual growth in a different way, in a fresh dimension, without necessarily boxing that in the cycles of religiosity, and without making it this thing that is so out of reach, like, some of you are closer to God, you're so holy, I can't reach you guys. And then we are the sinners, because I saw that there was that trend in Africa where people felt polarized and people felt excluded from communities of faith. And those who didn't feel excluded from communities of faith saw communities of faith as places where you could access some kind of benefit, but not necessarily as a platform for growth or for cultural impact and transformation. So Kings is a fresh approach. I love to call it the fresh approach, where we're combining three major platforms, right? The first platform is, how do you engage the power and the force of local churches? And, much of transformation in Africa came through local churches. The missionaries that came to Africa, establishing schools and communities, establishing hospitals and communities, bringing light, teaching people, adult learning centers, vocational skills, literacy, and all of those kind of things. So how do we engage local churches? How do we build local churches that are not just driven on the premise of an inside approach, right? That is not just about, reciting prayers, even though there's nothing wrong with that, when it's done in faith and with definition and with sincerity of heart and, with the right motives. How do you build churches that aren't just based on religious tenets, but that actually help people engage the core of their spirituality to explore the depths of their relationship with a God who cannot be seen, but can be accessed by faith, How do you do that? How do you make it organic? How do you make it engaging? How do you make it in-depth? How do you make it practical? How do you make it like, okay, it's not a Sunday morning thing where my grandmother forced me to come this morning. I'm not happy with the priest or the pastor. But we can have like an interactive, sit and talk. So, for example, we had one of those sessions before I came on the call today. And it's all about, how do you study spiritual things in a practical way? So that's the first approach, or the first component of Kings, the local churches. And we're hoping to plan this in different areas of different sizes across different parts of the world. Then we're looking at outreaches. How do you take the same message, export the same message to different parts of the world? So, for example, Avurengri, we might have something in Joburg, maybe 2018. Come to Joburg and have
Oh.
like a one-day outreach where we just share concepts on faith, also share on what does it mean to be kings. So for us, a king is a kingdom influencer in nations, generations, and systems. Now, what does that mean? We believe that everybody who's connected to God by faith has been endowed with certain spiritual and natural gifts that they can use to influence individuals and communities for the better. So I define a king as a person who is constantly and consciously representing God's kingdom everywhere they find themselves, using their spiritual and natural gifts to touch and transform individuals and communities, right? So outreaches are gateways into different nations. So we're looking to go to New York. We're looking to go to Joburg. We're looking to go to Pretoria, to Cape Town. We're looking to go to Kigali. We're looking to go to Yaoundé. We're looking to go different parts of the world and have like a 1 day to 3 day sessions where we can just export what we do regularly in those local churches in a friendly, interactive way that makes sense where people can ask questions and all of that. Number three, the third component of Kings is the charities. So much of Africa has been ravaged by sickness, by disease, by poor infrastructure, by poor road networks, by all kinds of unfortunate things. And so we see ourselves as a platform that will plant centers for food banks, emergency shelters, counseling, rehabilitation centers to get people off drugs, off unhealthy addictions. And so we have something that we call King's Court, which we're working towards. And King's Court is going to be an avenue where there's a three-step process to reintegrating people who are disenfranchised in society. So the first step is care, intensive care, like getting people off the streets, putting them through a process of care, love, and therapy. And the second thing is more therapy and coaching, where we're able to reverse some of those negative patterns in their lives. And then number three is the vocational skills training and the reintegration into business communities so they can serve effectively. So essentially, King's is a fresh approach where we're merging the best of our technology, the best of our intellect, the best of our sophistication and skill sets with the message of spiritual growth and personal development, and pushing that across the platforms of local church communities, outreach opportunities, and charity innovations.
Okay, I think I'm sold. When you do come to Johannesburg, please let me know. And through the 1,000 African Voices, we'll definitely spread the word. It sounds like something that all of us should be part of. So yeah, when you do come across, let us know. In 2012, I'm just looking at your profile. In 2012, you went to London, the UK. How was that experience? How did you end up in the UK for starters, and how was that experience? And what are some of the things that you learned in the UK that you find that you're able to now apply?
Brilliant question. So, like I mentioned earlier, I was privileged to serve as a leader on campus, and it really did open a lot of doors. And you know, for everyone who's listening, I think that if you're able to serve wherever you are, it's a huge opportunity, regardless of who is rewarding you, paying attention, or recognizing you or not. Because the truth is, the greatest reward for service is not the money you get, but the person you become. And so that process helped me get a lot of attention in the bigger community. And one of the communities was the church that I belonged to at that time. And they said, oh, wow, this guy did this on campus and did that on campus and built this team on campus and expanded that fellowship on campus and all of that. Okay, we need to give him more responsibility. And one thing led to another. And it so happened that the structure of that organization in the UK needed extra support. So based on the testament of my contribution in the 4 or 5 years prior to that time, they asked me, say, you know what, we need some help in the UK. We need some people to help the pastoral structure over there, the leadership system and the youth system, and some other aspects regarding marketing and all of that. And I had competences in all of those areas, right? Even though I studied chemical engineering. Because whilst I was studying chemical engineering, I was picking up tools as well in life skills and other areas that really helped me. And so that was the key. I said, okay, you know what? I'm going to go. I'll do this. I'll go serve. So I was given a missionary visa to serve in that capacity whilst handling things that were outside of core mission work. And so it gave me the opportunity to interact with different communities because we had to do a lot of projects with the communities, to interface with the communities, and also get in touch with the mayor of our borough at the time. So it was, for me, a massive learning experience because, of course, there's a difference between visiting places and living in places. And one of the things I really noticed I really appreciate about United Kingdom is the detail that goes into planning, the detail that goes into planning. I noticed a bit of that in South Africa. I was in South Africa a couple of years ago, and I noticed that particularly in the key areas in Joburg, you could tell that even the layout of the city, the road network, the way the malls were structured, the way the different communities were built, the garden, the landscaping, a lot of thinking has gone into it. So I saw that in the United Kingdom, a lot of thinking goes into the layout, goes into creating the environment. I also noticed that they have a huge maintenance culture. So generally, before anything falls apart, somebody's already fixing it. Somebody's already working on it. They're sending you updates saying, oh, you know what, there will be road works 2 months from now. I remember, I think sometime in December 2014, I actually saw a notice somewhere around London Bridge, and it was a notice informing the public of repair work that were going to take place, I think about 4 months away from the time. So that degree of passion for excellence, I would say, the maintenance culture. Beyond that, the value for human life, which I think is something that many people in Africa need to learn. I hear things happen in Africa almost every day, like, maybe issues of rape, issues of sexual abuse, violation, death, and all of that, accidents. And, many Africans just go like, well, that's bad news. It just happened. But in the UK, it's a big deal. It's a big deal. Like if somebody gets killed, knocked over, a policeman gets assaulted, it's in the news, and they really work around it. So this is some of the things that I picked up in terms of building communities. There has to be an increased appreciation for human life, the dignity of the human being, the dignity of any kind of labor, as long as it's decent, it's legal, it's not immoral, and being able to plan. So, for example, in our work at King's, before we even had our first inaugural public meeting, I already had details for the next 20 years. Wow. Now, of course, these details are not like day-to-day details, but they are huge chunks that give us clarity, that give us definition. So the average person on my team can tell you what the vision is, what the focus is, what we intend to be by November 23rd, 2036. I mean, by that date, we intend to have reached 1 billion people. Yeah. So those are some of the things that have gone into my planning system as a result of my exposure to United Kingdom. Just seeing the way the society runs and knowing that, these guys, they have rich culture, rich heritage. They have buildings that have been there for 200, 300 years that are well kept. They have a story that they're telling, and they have plans for the future.
Okay, I mean, just listening to you, it's very clear that you exude so much positivity. So I'm going to ask you a question regarding how you see Africa. Suppose as part of the 1,000 African Voices, we need to start thinking about the broader continent. In your views, given what you have seen, not only in Africa but also abroad, where are some instances or places where you believe we are failing as a continent? And on the other side of that, what are some of the successes that you have seen throughout the continent? Just to share your experience from your perspective.
All right, brilliant. So let's deal with the seemingly negative things. I'm particularly excited about Africa because we have an emerging population, which we ought to capitalize. But before we talk about the prospects, I want to just talk about the fact that we have not managed our resources well. That's an area where there's a lot of room for improvement. And when I say resources, people are quick to think about the bauxite or the diamond in Angola, or like the oil wells in Sudan, or Nigeria and all of that, or whatever we have in Mozambique or Sierra Leone and all of that. We can talk about the tin, the aluminum, the bauxite. We can talk about the gold, the silver. We can talk about the tourmaline. We can talk about all of those things. But those are not the real resources of a nation. The real resources of a nation are not the treasures beneath our feet, but they are the treasures between our ears. And so I'm talking about the real estate, our human beings, our people, their perspective, their intelligence, their will. The African man, the African woman is a tough person. That toughness of mind, that agility, that irrepressible, undying spirit, that passion for life, we have not done well with that. And one of the ways in which is that we haven't invested heavily in education. So many communities in Africa still benefit from the schools that were built by missionaries, 50, 100 years ago. Many of our parents went to those schools. And many of us in our generation, the younger generation, we went to schools that were founded by people who went to those missionary schools. And if you're to look at many public schools in Africa, you're still dealing with issues of inadequate resources. You're still dealing with issues of poor power supply or erratic power supply. You're dealing with teachers not being paid well. You're dealing with sicknesses and diseases, epidemic here and there. And all of that is because we're not investing in the right things. So we still invest in a lot of frivolities. We invest sometimes in buildings that are occupied by just maybe 2% of the entire population. Our government houses are like mansions and palaces, right? And we have people living in certain environments that are in conditions none of us can be proud of, at least the enlightened ones amongst us cannot be proud of. Now, so that's an area where we failed. We've not invested in education. We've not invested adequately in people development. And of course, issues revolving around political imbalance or societal imbalance. Everybody's grateful for what has happened now with Mugabe. And those kind of changes, like even when you talk about the things about the Arabian Spring. So let's shift now to the positivity. Now, the good news for Africa is that we have an emerging population, right? And that emerging population, I believe that by 2030, the African population is going to be the youngest workforce. I believe that. I think Africa is going to have the youngest workforce by 2030. So that's just 13 years from now. Now, that's a good thing. Why? Because with the advent of technology, with what's happening in Kenya, Kenya has radical advancements in technology where the average person on the street is able to work his mobile phone and leverage a few apps to do their business. Now, that's also happening in a grand scale in Nigeria. So you have a lot of people emerging in the technological space. You have people building their own businesses, and they're exposed to best practices, global practices. They're watching TED Talks. They're attending events like Global Shapers and Hive and some of this World Economic Forum sponsored events. People are they're getting exposed. So see, we're having this conversation across hundreds of miles, right? Using technology. So people are investing time online and they're learning. So that's a very good thing. And I believe that the African youth who's listening to this should be encouraged, should be fired up and say, you know what? We've had people talk about Europe and their supremacy. We've heard people talk about America and their opulence and excellence and how they changed the world. But there is an emergence happening in Africa. And I believe that the next generation of innovators, even scientific innovators, are going to emerge from Africa. I don't know if you heard about the 20-year-old Nigerian who was employed by Microsoft, I think it was last year, because he was working on a certain project and somebody at Microsoft heard about it and, one call and the guy was moved over there. So there are a lot of things happening like that. Silicon Valley is beginning to invest in many tech startups in Africa. I heard about a startup in Africa that got a grant of $1.5 million. So that's happening in the tech space. That's happening in the fashion industry. That's happening in agriculture. Yeah. Wow. In agriculture. So because of our massive land mass, and because I know a friend, she's been interviewed by the BBC. She was recently in the news again locally in Nigeria. And what she's doing is that she's building an agri hub for young people want to get involved in agriculture, but don't have the technical training. So these guys have their BSc and they want to go into agriculture. So with the level of exposure they're bringing into that space, you can rest assured that Africa has great hope, that Africa has a huge opportunity, because we can emerge as the food basket of the world. We can emerge as the workforce of the world. We can emerge as the tech giants of the world. I believe that. I'm not just saying that off the top of my tongue. I believe it might take us 10 years, might take us 15 years. But we have such a huge opportunity to maximize the youth population and to leverage the wisdom of those who've gone ahead of us, and to do something that all of us will be proud of a few years from
now. No, very well said. And I totally agree with what you're saying, that most of these things become a reality when we, as Africans, start changing our mindset and start believing in our own resources that we can actually achieve if we set our minds to achieving the great things that are out there. I'm going to just shift to, with most of our guests, we ask them about the books that they like to read. But in your instance, I see you've written quite a few books.
Yes.
By my last count, you had written 4 books. Just Do It, Seize the Moment, Good to Go, New Year's Guide. And the one that I'm particularly interested in is Life Lessons from Football. And I'll tell you why I'm interested in that book. It's because I watch so much football, and after a game, I'll sometimes ask myself whether I am wasting time spending 90 minutes to 2 hours just watching football. So I'll be very interested to hear your perspective on the life lessons from football. What is that book about, and what are those lessons, if you don't mind sharing with our listeners?
Oh, I'm always glad to share. As long as it's going to help somebody. Yeah, so I think it was sometime in 2011, I was doing like what we call a tweet chat or a tweet session, where you just post inspiring thoughts on Twitter. So I thought about it, it's like, you know what, let me just talk about some of the things I've learned watching football. Because as a little child, at some point in my life, I admired footballers so much that I ended up staining my dad's walls because I was kicking footballs against the wall. And then fast forward to the debaters, the show I went for, one of the topics was on football. And I opened up with a statement saying, life is like a game of football. Success is not measured by how well we run around, but by how many goals we score.
Oh, beautiful.
So I started building on that thought, right? That really life is like a game of football. It's not about how well you run around, it's how many goals you score. And I started thinking about that, okay, are there things in football that I can apply to life? And I said, definitely. In football, there is a field. In life, everybody works in a field. You work in the field of business, the field of entertainment, the field of information technology, the field of IT. I just said that, well, field of finance, humanitarian services and all of that. So, well, in football, every player needs a coach. In life, everyone needs a coach. You can call the person a teacher, a mentor, a life coach, an advisor, a spiritual leader. We all need coaches, right? In football, there is a goal. Now, in life, without goals, you really can't register your success. In football, you need a team. In life, to build a house, to write a book, to bake cake, you need a team. You need to work with tools. So the book Life Lessons from Football is just a close examination at the things that work in the world of football and being able to apply them practically in our lives. So it's not really about, just people who love football. It's for people who love football. It's people that watch football. It's for people that love life. It's for people that are working towards something. And there are 21 chapters, and each chapter deals with a different topic. So one of them is called Learn from the Masters, where I talk about coaches and mentorship and all of that. Another one is Study Your Competition. Like Jose Mourinho will go to the board and they have a game plan and they're studying whether it's Manchester United or Arsenal or Tottenham. They're studying their opponents so they can prepare adequately for the next match. So similarly, you have to study a competition as well. And then I also infuse some facts and exciting things, right? In the book, for example, one exciting thing is, I don't know if you remember the match between Germany and Brazil in 2014.
Oh, yes, how can I forget?
Remember
As you
that?
said, I spend a lot of time watching football.
So it was 7-1, and that made history as the most tweeted sports event in history, 35.6 million tweets.
Gee,
So beyond the, that's a lot, right?
yeah.
And there are so many fun facts that I included in the book, right? So, for example, I think there was a part of football fashion, and I talked about how Jose Mourinho used to wear a grey coat. His grey coat sold at a charity event for £22,000. Yeah.
Yeah.
£22,000, or like the Manchester Adidas deal. They had a kit contract which was worth £750 million. And that's going to last from 2015 to 2025. So I just used things in the world of football, and I brought them to a point where the reader can apply them to their lives and find some value. So beyond just watching and supporting, you can draw some wisdom from it. And the book is available on Amazon for anybody who's interested in.
Oh, yeah, I was actually going to ask for our listeners who want to go out after this episode, and I being one of them, to go out and search for your books. Are they all available on Amazon.com?
Well, 2 of them are available on Amazon.com. And then for the other 2, if you're going to get them, you can reach me at Damilola.com, or just follow me on Instagram. That's Dami Oluwatoyinbo, DamiOluwatoyinbo. That's pretty long, so let me go over it one more time. On Instagram, my name is DamiOluwatoyinbo, and then by mail is Dami@DamiOluwatoyinbo.com.
Okay, I will definitely include all the contact details as part of our show notes, so our listeners can go on to either Podbean or our website, 1000africanvoices.com, and we will list all your details there. Damilola, I'm quite aware of the time limitations. Normally, when you speak to someone for an hour, it feels like a long time, but I must confess that this conversation has felt like about 9-10 minutes. It's amazing how time flies when you are feeling this positive.
I know what you mean. I've had a fantastic time speaking and sharing, and you're such an amazing host,
Oh, no, thank you for saying that. Maybe, given everything that you are involved in, you talked about football now, and I'm wondering if you have any hobbies and where you get the time for that. Do you have any hobbies when you're not being a motivational speaker or writing books or running Kings? Are there things that you do in order to relax? Just some of your hobbies, if you have any.
Oh, yeah, definitely. What we're doing right now is one of my hobbies.
Oh, okay, nice.
Yeah, chatting is a huge thing for me, just sharing and speaking. But apart from that, I enjoy playing Scrabble. And at the times where I've immersed myself in Scrabble, I became sort of addicted. So I stayed away for a long time. I've stayed away for a couple of months now. But I do enjoy playing Scrabble or any word game. I really love that. And then I also enjoy watching sometimes documentaries, watching other people speak. And sometimes they are not really on, transformation. It could just be a show on animals, like Animal Planet, National Geographic, and wildlife and all of that. And every now and again, of course, I go to the cinemas and see a movie. I try to do that something like twice a month, thereabout. So those are essentially things that I do, and of course, reading.
Okay, yeah, I can imagine. The last question, Damilola, it's I was tempted to ask you about if you had a billboard somewhere in Lagos, what message would be on that billboard? Essentially, I'm asking, what's the one thing that you like people as they go to work every morning and they're stuck in the notorious Lagos traffic? What would you want people to read every morning on their way to work?
Love God, love people, make a positive difference.
Beautiful. That is a very good place to end the conversation. From the 1000 African Voices, I have loved every single moment of this conversation. Thank you for your generosity. I have so much positive energy just having listened to what you had to share, and hopefully our listeners will feel the same way. So I would like to really thank you for coming onto our show and really wish you all the best. And best of luck with the nomination for the Mentor of the Year. And I can clearly now understand why you are amongst the 2017 most influential young Africans. It's very clear to me why you are on that list, because I feel so motivated. I feel like I can go out there and make a contribution to our beautiful continent. So thank you very much, Damilola.
Thank you so much. It's been such a delight. Thank you for having me.
You've been listening to another episode of the Kungana Africa Project. Our sound engineer is Bandile Lukele. Kungana Africa, one voice at a time. Please join us next time as we bring you yet another interesting and exciting voice. Don't forget that you can find us on the Podbean app by searching for 1000 African Voices. It will really help our project if you sign up as a follower by clicking the follow button. You can get the show notes as well as stream the show on our website, which is 1000africanvoices.com. Our Twitter handle is @Kungana1000, 1000 African Voices, one Africa, one podcast, 1,000 voices. Till next time, take care.
Connecting Africa.